Thursday, the jet was gassed up, and our boys went to see Caleb Downs today. We'll let you know how that went. There's a big NIL deal on the table for him, so we'll see. Take a swing at it, see what we can do. A little bit on Caden Proctor, and is Bill O'Brien about to be our offensive coordinator? That would be spicy. I'd be excited to talk about that one. But as always, we appreciate you guys for kicking it with us. Thank you so much. Again, you guys have been killing it, growing this channel for us. We appreciate the super chats. Thank you for taking care of our military. We've signed up a bunch of new members to our Pay It Forward program. So thank you guys. All of your donations for your questions via the super chats are going into our Pay It Forward fund. And it's been awesome. So thank you for that. If you enjoy this content, please click that like button. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Send it to your friends, family, anybody that loves Ohio State football. Help us grow this thing. We appreciate you so much. And also click that little alert bell so you get alert when we go live, which is usually around 7 every night, unless there is some sort of a sporting event going on that we do not want to go against. So we appreciate you guys so much. We're going to get right into this. Nevada, we are taking a big swing at Caleb Downs. We gassed up the NetJet, which is usually $25,000, $30,000 to fly round trip down to Atlanta. So this is not a cheap trip. Tim Walton, Matt Giriani, Jim Knowles, Ryan Day, all in the metal tube flying down to meet with Caleb. Again, a lot of smoke around Georgia, obviously. But this is a kid. He's got a 7-figure deal on the table from the foundation, which should be a very nice little signing bonus for a young 19-year-old. What are your thoughts as of this hour? Again, I think that he's the missing piece. He's getting a quarterback level NIL deal from us. So I don't know what else we're going to do. Short of siring T-Rob, who Georgia hired. I don't know what else we can do. Ryan is going all out for this one. Your thoughts on Caleb Downs?
Well, look, the reason they needed the big jet was for the big bag that they were dragging on down there. So if Ohio State doesn't get Caleb Downs, it's not going to be for lack of effort. It's not going to be for lack of attention. It's not going to be because our NIL wasn't sufficient. It's not going to be because Georgia paid more for him. So what I would say is Ohio State absolutely put their best foot forward today. As of this moment, they have not heard that they're not the selection. So if there's anything that's out there, from the people taking a swing, saying to cite this, all I can tell you is that Ohio State has not been informed that they are not the pick. They feel like the meeting went really well. I think they gave them a lot to think about regarding how the defense is. Clearly the NIL offer was, like you said, quarterback level, impressive. And we'll all see. I mean, it's supposed to be the decision's supposed to be made by the weekend, whatever that means. Does it mean it goes tomorrow, or does it mean it goes into the weekend? Not exactly sure, but we should all know shortly. And, hey, all you want in these situations is for Ohio State to put their best foot forward. And given the kind of offseason that Ryan Day has had, that Ohio State has had, I would not count them out because, if people would have said to me, hey, we got this guy Judkins from Ole Miss that's in the portal, and what do you think Ohio State's chances are? And I'm like, with Trey coming back, 0, less than 0, not a freaking chance. And sure enough, he signed. So this has been that kind of offseason. So I am absolutely not taking Ohio State out of the equation because I think all the rules that used to apply with Ohio State in these situations are off the table. And we'll all find out shortly. So I'm keeping the positive vibes thing, keep my fingers crossed, and we'll see.
This has been the weirdest offseason ever because of NIL, and not just with Ohio State, all over college football. I mean, if you look at crystal balls and analysts, and he's going there in predictions, I mean, Kyle McCord crystal balled by everybody to go to Nebraska. How'd that work out? Dylan Raiola was crystal balled to go to Georgia. How'd that work out? Will Howard was, we were talking about Will Howard in mid-December after we found out Ryan Day met with him in Dallas on the down low, on the QT, and we're like, ooh, that sounds like he might be our next quarterback. And then literally like 4 days later, he gets crystal balled to USC by everybody. And I was like, I talked to my sources, like, what is going on? You said that he's coming to Ohio State, and he went out with Lincoln Riley. And then Lincoln got squirrely and something happened. And all of a sudden, Will's coming back around the edge and he ends up at Ohio State roundabout. But, Cam Ward, Miami then says, oh, I'm going to the NFL. And now he commits to Miami again. So, again, like, is it pie in the sky? I don't know. I mean, there seems to be a lot of funny money when you show the light on some of these NIL deals. And I think some of these guys are like, well, you offer this money, because Caleb Down's going to get a huge NIL deal. Wherever he ends up, if he goes to Georgia, Ohio State, wherever. And they start shining the light on the details of these contracts. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, I don't like that. That doesn't look good. Do you guys really have the money? Like Florida State's getting crushed right now because a lot of funny money out there. And these groups that these guys are representing, Caleb Downs and Mark Fletcher, JJ Smith, like they're very sophisticated. You're not going to pull one over on Shafi Fields, Rosenhaus, like some of these guys. So, I mean, if it ain't all there in cash or transferred right away electronically or whatever it may be, then things fall apart. So again, if I'm Ryan Day and I'm Tim Walton and I'm Matt Gariani, I'm pedal to the metal until, they tell you to stop calling. And obviously they're taking a visit, so it's not totally dead. So hey, I mean, safety-driven defense, you need a safety. I think that us and Georgia probably have the two best rosters in the country this year, so why not take a crack at it? So Sean, I appreciate your your thought with the 5. Please no more Downs talk. But I mean, they just met with him today. So clearly Ohio State still thinks that they're in it. They're not just wasting jet fuel, and killing the alpacas by burning jet fuel down to Atlanta. But I appreciate your 5. Time to move on. We'll see. Again, he could commit during the show, but he hasn't committed yet, and the boys all flew down there. David Green, show thanks for the deuce. Downs or no downs, Ohio State will still have the best D in 2024. That I totally agree with. I think that with our pass rush that we have coming back and our corners we have coming back, our defense is going to be fantastic. Nevada, your thought on the 2024 Ohio State Buckeye defense?
Well, I thought it was going to be one of the best defenses in the past 40 since 1973, before we were ever talking about Caleb Downs. So adding Caleb Downs would be unbelievable, absolutely fantastic. Again, you guys know for 6 months I'm a big Malik Hartford guy. So if Caleb Downs doesn't come and Malik Hartford's the guy, you're not going to hear any crying out of me, because I think Hartford's a future star at Ohio State. I think the defense is going to be great. The defense always is about having veteran guys at key spots. And when you can control the defensive line, which we're going to be able to do, and you have control at the cornerback, man, that's the ball game right there. And those are the key spots. Those are the key spots that enable the defensive coordinator to take more chances, to take more risks, to be more aggressive. And I love the Ohio State defense going into 2024. I loved them in 2023. And as much as I loved them in 2023, I love them exponentially more in 2024. I think I will go on record. I will bet anybody right now that Ohio State averages single digits in points for the season. And that's a bold statement, man. That is bold, but I'll take book on that. That's how good I think the defense is going to be in 2024. And I'm saying that before I know whether or not we're going to get Caleb Downs. I think we're going to be that good. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think it's going to be ridiculous how good this defense is. Quick question, Bill O'Brien. A lot of smoke around Bob. That's the guy. He's very polarizing. I'm surprised. On BuckeyeScoop.com, there's been a huge back and forth about him, pluses, minuses as a coordinator. Again, we've talked about like 6 or 7 different guys. Liam Cohen from Kentucky, Jason Candle from Toledo, Bill O'Brien, the other LaFleur brother, not the guy from the Packers, his brother who's with the Rams, I believe. God, out of that lot, I think that Bill O'Brien would be the best coordinator. And people are going to kill me for saying that. But, when he was at Bama, I mean, he had J-Mo, he had Bryce Young, he had Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, he had a really good offense that year. They averaged 42 a game in the SEC, which is pretty good. They lost 2 games. They lost to, like, LSU and Tennessee. One of them they lost by 1. One they lost by 3. So, they were competitive. I mean, Bryce Young won the Heisman, and frankly, I don't think Bryce Young's that great. I think that he would be the definition of offensive head coach, because he's been a head coach in the NFL at Houston. Obviously, at Penn State, he took over a program that was, hit by the iceberg, and they're hitting the bottom of the ocean when they got all those sanctions after the Jerry Sandusky stuff. Nevada, your thoughts on Bill O'Brien potentially being our offensive coordinator?
Well, look, you famously told the story about when we were when Urban Meyer was we had Chip Kelly in the building and he was talking to Chip Kelly and we were thinking, well, Chip Kelly's going to be the OC, and it turned out he was just going for a consultation and using him as kind of a stepping stone to recommend Ryan Day. Well, we talked about it last night. I know that there have been numerous conversations. I'll say numerous being more than two conversations between Ryan Day and Bill O'Brien. I have been under the impression that is to vet out other guys. He's using them as a resource. So it would be a surprise to me if Bill O'Brien was the choice. But for me, it'd be a pleasant surprise. I think Bill O'Brien. I mean, I wasn't actually that familiar with. I was familiar with how he did at Penn State. I'm obviously familiar with his background, but I went did a deep dive on his numbers for the 2 years he was at Alabama, and he averaged 39 points and 41 points and 488 yards one year, 477 yards another year. So you're not talking about a guy who's B level. You're talking about a guy who somehow has survived job interviews with Bill Belichick and Nick Saban
Yeah.
at a level high enough to get selected. So, I am not saying that he's the guy. I'm not even saying that I know he's the guy or even in contention. I do know that there have been conversations. But if he were the guy, put me down under the excited category for that. I think it would be he's a guy that's tenacious enough, that has enough standing that he could stand up to Ryan Day and really put an imprint on the offense beyond somebody who's just going to rubber stamp it or just do what Ryan wants. And I really think that's what the OSU offense needs is some new ideas, some new thoughts, and that kind of I hate to say it, but that Kevin Wilson like presence in the booth that can provide an adult to kind of count around with Ryan Day. So that's my thoughts on it, and it'll be interesting to see. It's interesting how we talked about it last night, and then today, the Twitter kind of buzzed with his name being like the front runner. I don't know if there's any relation to that, or if that's just people throwing names out there, or there's any validity to it. But I'm digging on that, and I should have something on that shortly.
I think, the thing about Bill O'Brien is if Ryan Day brings him into the Woody Hayes as the offensive coordinator, he's a guy that can actually coach Ryan, and Ryan could learn a ton from because this guy's, I mean, he's been the offensive coordinator for Nick Saban, the college football GOAT, and Bill Belichick, pro football GOAT. He's also been an NFL head coach, and they were good for, I mean, they had a stretch 10-6, 10-7. I mean, real respectable they were 10-6 ish, when they were with the Texans. So, I mean, he didn't go there and vomit all over himself. He was more than sufficient. I mean, Bill Belichick hired him twice. So, you got to wonder if Belichick would bring him with him to Atlanta. It looks like he's going to get that Atlanta Falcons job. So, again, could it happen? Maybe. But I think there'd be a lot of, I always look for if Ryan hires somebody, could Ryan learn from them? Because I think that's the problem with when you hire the kids, when you hire Keenan Bailey and these interns, is like, I'm sure Ryan can learn something from him, but it's not going to be the level of like bringing in a Bill O'Brien who's like coached in Super Bowls, worked for Bill Belichick, worked for Saban. I mean, Ryan could say, hey, how did you guys do this at Bama? Hey, how'd you do this at New England? Hey, I mean, you're literally going to learn from how the best football coaches in the world did things. And I think that would really enhance the program because I think with the current staff, it's just stagnant. Like we've got a bunch of guys that have been in the same trees, like the Chip Kelly tree, the Adazio tree. This would bring in an injection of all new stuff, Saban stuff. He was an NFL head coach for multiple years. He had to deal with, Deshaun Watson. He had a bad fault with DeAndre Hopkins. And that happens. Sometimes it just there's a staleness that happens when guys don't get new contracts that they think they deserve. So I think Bill O'Brien is abrasive? Yeah. Do I think he's an ass? Sometimes? Yeah. But I also think that he's a guy that he's not going to be scared to call the offense. He's not going to be scared to run the room. He's not going to be scared to call plays because he's called plays in huge games. And again, Jameson Williams thrived under this guy. I mean, JMO should have won the Blitnikoff that year. Excuse me. The interesting thing, and again, this would be totally pie in the sky, is that Adrian Clem is the offensive line coach for the Patriots. Obviously, they all got fired. He's a free agent. It would be interesting to see if he would have anything to do with coming back to college. In Nevada, do you think Bill O'Brien would hire any extra coaches or would it just be him?
I think it would just be him, and the reason I think it would just be him would be, look, Bill O'Brien is at best a 2 year type of proposition, maybe a 1 year type of proposition, and so are you going to really flush your other assistants for a guy who's only going to be there as kind of a waste? I mean, it's different with Knowles because Knowles could be a fixture here for a while. And so for him bringing in Matt makes a lot of sense. Run your kind of defense. You've kind of proven yourself. You're going to be here, and we hope that Knowles is here for a long time, called as the grizzled old defensive coordinator. But a guy like O'Brien, maybe he's here 1 year, maybe he's here 2 years. And is Ryan really going to fire his best friend, Justin Fry, for a guy who's going to be here for a year or two? I would put that as doubtful. Um, so yeah, that would I would have to see that before I would believe it. So I would think it would just be a type of situation like they had kind of in Bama, where at Bama, what does Saban do? Saban just rolls those guys through. Kiffin, Sarkisian, O'Brien, just big name guys, one after another, getting the best of the best in those positions, and he doesn't care about longevity or 5 year plans or 10 year plans. He's just like, let's just be good this year, and I'll worry about next year. Next year, I think that's more of an approach that Ryan Day's taken, probably the smart one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think he'd be here longer than 2 years. I think that, Ryan, if he wants to do the urban thing, he's got to demand a 2 year commitment from these guys. If it's Jason Candle, if it's Bill O'Brien, if it's Liam Cohen. I'm the coldest on Liam Cohen. Obviously, he was in the league, but I don't like guys that bounce from job to job year over year, because he went from Kentucky, he was at the Rams, Kentucky, then he went to the Rams for a year, and then he came back to Kentucky after a year. Like, I don't like that. Like, again, and I could be completely wrong. Maybe Sean McVay. And again, he was, that year he was with the Rams, he was your OC, he wasn't calling the plays. Obviously, Sean McVay is a play caller, so I don't love that. Bill O'Brien, everywhere he's been, even as a head coach for the Texans, he was a play caller. So he's been calling plays for like a dozen straight years. And he's worked with Brady. He's worked with Bryce Young, Heisman winner. So he, again, like I like the breadth of experience that he'd bring. Did a lot with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. Obviously, he's an idiot, but I mean, at the time, those were two really good tight ends that they used to deploy in interesting ways. So I kind of like the versatility that he has. Actually, I love that. And again, I love the idea that, Ryan could, if he makes this hire, if it happens, which it could, he could sit there and say, I've got a guy who's coached an NFL team. He coached Penn State when they had 50 scholarships or whatever they had. They lost a ton. And I could truly let him run the offensive staff room. Like, I don't have to be there. I could truly be a CEO. And I'm sure Ryan would always be involved in the meetings just because he's an offensive guy, but he doesn't have to be the overseer the way that I feel like he has to be now, if that makes sense. So you get a guy like this, and it's a good deal. Slam Bush, thank you for the 5. If you have a question, toss that in the chat. Francis Plum, thank you for the 5. Non-compliance with NCAA is to prevent self-incrimination. Well, yeah, obviously. The who taught who ran what and where they got it is likely criminal. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the reason why they ran and hide. That's why Connor Stallions, refused to cooperate. And again, like in life, like if you do this in real life, in court, if you say, I'm not going to talk, then you're going to get smashed. Because essentially, if you don't talk, it's basically like an admission of guilt. It's like in the NFL or in college football, we used to get drug tested all the time. We get drug tested for street drugs, for steroids, whatever. If you skip that test, it's essentially a fail. It's so, I mean, guys that were nervous about it. I was never scared of anything. I took probably 50 drug tests in my career. I was never worried about any of them. But there were guys that were extremely worried, so they did whatever. But if you say, hey, I'm going to skip town and not take the test, then it's a fail. So, if you're not going to talk and you're not going to cooperate and you're not going to get interviewed, then you might as well just be as guilty, because then they could just run wild with what you're hiding, as opposed to just being honest and copying to stuff. Nevada, your thoughts on them dodging talking to the NCAA, mostly Connor Stallions and some of these guys. Do you think that will get Michigan hammered even worse?
Yeah, well, non-cooperation with the NCAA because you're required to cooperate with the NCAA.
Yeah,
That's part of the
exactly.
statute, and when you don't do that, like you said, that's considered an admission of guilt. But I'm going to spin this a little separately. The one thing that because when you talk about criminal, I mean that whole thing with the quarterback coach Weiss. I want to get his name
Yeah.
pronounced right. So is it Weiss? Is it Weiss? Can we get some determination on that once
I'll
and
just
for all?
assume it's Weiss because it'll smell like Charlie Weiss. So,
Okay, so we're gonna go Weiss. So
okay.
Weiss, the guy who's the quarterback coach, who gets just canned immediately, and then he doesn't surface anywhere else. He's like gone. He's like off the grid.
Yeah.
He's like the Unabomber, and he's gone into like witness protection all of a sudden. Um, that's got to be really unsettling if you're a Michigan fan, man. That's got to be because like guys like that when they get fired, they always end up somewhere else as an analyst, as a coach, as an assistant, as the assistant to the assistant, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like even Shooter on Hoosiers got another job. He got the chance to run the picket fence and stuff like that, even when he'd been drinking and stuff. But this guy doesn't get a chance to be a coach somewhere. It's because the stuff that he was doing was really bad, and the stuff that was on his computer is really incriminating to Michigan. And when that stuff comes out, when that criminal investigation completes, and that stuff now is turned over to the NCAA, it just makes it even worse for Michigan. So yeah, a lot of badness going on around there, and for Michigan, the silence is absolutely ominous because if you're a Michigan fan, you want to know what that was all about. You want to know what was on that computer. And until that comes out, man, it's like the sword of Damocles hanging over their head. So I'm waiting for that one to drop.
Yeah, I mean, a guy that's like an offensive, either position coach, it's a high level spot. Like those guys always land as like an analyst at Bama or an analyst in the NFL or somewhere. I mean, when you're a coach, man, it's unless you're just getting a massive buyout and you're further down the line, like you're Ed Ogeron or a guy that's in your 50s, 60s, you got a huge check coming in every month. Like those guys always want to keep their name in the hopper, and so they go get an analyst job. Like Tom Herman was an analyst for the Bears after he got fired at Texas, and they always want to just kind of stay in the loop, keep learning the game, maybe expand their horizons, and maybe expand their network because you never know. The thing about coaching is you never know where the next hot coach is going to be sitting. The guy who becomes the next big A-lister name. Like nobody knew that this Johnson guy, who's the OC for the Detroit Lions, would be like one of the new in vogue guys that the Panthers are going to interview and the Chargers are going to interview, and everybody wants to interview because of the Lions' offensive success. So sometimes it just helps to be in the right room, and you might find a guy, and you're just like, oh, this would be a huge ad. We're getting a ton of super chats. Appreciate the super chats, guys. VP of Hype, thank you for the 5. This is a great question. For about 5 years, Dabo would get the top recruits versus Ohio State. Jackson Carman, Travis Etienne. How and why did it happen? Well, I mean, you gotta understand, like sometimes like you guys like we go against like really good coaches. So like when you lose to Nick Saban or you lose to Kirby Smart or you lose to Dabo when Clemson was like the A-list program, like sometimes it's different strokes for different folks. Like I mean, Jackson Carman never loved Ohio State. And that was the thing that, people were like, oh, well, Stud lost this kid and whatever. And I'm like, well, he was a weird kid. Like, I'll never forget this kid was like critical of Urban not playing Dwayne Haskins. And he made some stupid tweet. And I was like, who is this kid? He's a 17-year-old recruit. And he was saying, Haskins should be the starting quarterback. And I don't know if that was after we lost the game or what it was. But it was really weird for a junior in high school to be saying something like that. And some kids are just weird. Like I'm telling you, like I've said this story a million times. Andre Walker from Cleveland Glenville, 2011 recruit. I think it was a 2012 class. That kid, it was a 2011 class because he would have been with Chris Carter and all the turds that we took that year. That kid, out of the blue, decided to go to USC. For no reason. Like, I mean, it wasn't like, he had some amazing relationship with a coach or Pete Carroll. I mean, he wanted to go Hollywood. He wanted to go every other, he didn't want to be the stereotypical Glenville kid that goes down 71 and goes to Ohio State, like 95% of them do. And he went to USC and it worked out terribly. I mean, he went there, played a little bit, but had basically no career. Cordell Scott was another guy from Glenville that went to Illinois, which is stupid. That could have gone to Ohio State, but you know, Jackson Carman has been a Fruit Loop. I mean, since he was in high school, and he went to Clemson. He had a decent career. Ended up being a second round pick. I think he was vastly overdrafted by the Bengals, and I think it was partially because he was a local kid from Cincinnati. He was a big kid. They thought they could get it out of him. He's been an absolute catastrophe in the NFL, and he's likely going to get moved on from this year. They can't put him on the field. And so sometimes it just happens. I mean, like we lost Sean Trell Henderson too, and the whole world wanted to burn down the Woody Hayes and how are we ever going to survive? And sometimes I'm just like, guys, like let's let it play out. Let's see how we do. And it turns out like we got Nick Petit Frere instead of Jackson Carman. Nick Petit Frere is 10 million times better than Jackson Carman, and he's going to have a great year next year in the NFL. He had his little snafu with the gambling thing this year, but Nevada, your thoughts on losing Jackson Carman?
Well, look, there's always those kids in state that want to be the contrarians, the kind of the anti Ohio State kids, or the kids that aren't going to do what you expect them to do. And Jackson was just one of those kids. You see there's it just happens. And as you said, Dabo Swinney's one of the great salesmen in college football, as is Kirby Smart, as was Nick Saban, as was Pete Carroll in his prime. Those guys are formidable competition, and every now and then you lose them. And for Clemson, I mean, look, Clemson was an attractive program, was kind of a now type of program, and Clemson was cheating long before cheating was really cool. I mean, Clemson was really good at it. They'd institutionalized it, and now with NIL, I think it's really caught up to them, because before they had the advantage of the bag, and now that the bag is legalized, I think schools like Clemson really get hurt the most because they were good at it. I mean, they were really, really good. I think I've told the story before. I had a friend of mine that went there and got cash from Clemson, and this is going way back. This is going back to like 1980. This is like Denny Ford or whatever. I mean, like we're talking about like long time ago type of stuff. And hey, they managed to win a national championship back then and do their thing. But now with NILs going, I think it's kind of caught up with them, because everybody else can do by writing a check what they used to do with their Chick-fil-A bags. And that hurts schools like Clemson.
Yeah, and when you guys ask why I love NIL, because it negates that. We can do that now. We can give people bags of money. We do give people bags of money. Like the foundation gave Will Howard $1 million to come here. They gave JJ Smith $800,000 to come here. So like that's real money. And you don't have to do it in the dark of the night. There's nothing synthetic where it's going to go through this offshore account. It's like literally like you can hand them a check and they can deposit it. And you're like, wow, this is amazing that we actually get to do this legally. Because again, for years, like we would lose guys because, they would cheat. And now it's all out in the open. And I love that. Because again, like for Ohio State, like, we try to do everything right, and we get screwed up sometimes, but there's a lot of goody two shoes with what we do, and it kills us. When you go against Bama and some of these schools that just openly pay kids, Florida State openly pay kids, now we can do it legally. That's like the funny thing is like I love it. Because there's no more we lost this kid because we they paid him and we couldn't. Now it's just let's go raise that money, boys. Bitch Chicken 5K, thank you for the 5. As a former player, is team chemistry that important when talking about a dominant team? A Los Angeles Buckeye fan, by the way. Yeah, I think chemistry is really important. I think that the good teams I played on, like 05, 06, we had great team chemistry. 07, I thought we had really good chemistry. And there's the high levels of it, like offense, defense, captains got to have a little bit of chemistry. And then there's like the kind of the more micro levels of like position rooms having chemistry, people being selfless. I think that all adds up, and I think it's important. Now, is it everything? No. I mean, there's some teams that fought like cats and dogs and whatever, but I think that, when people can be selfless, people that might have gotten beaten out, people that maybe didn't get the roles they wanted, and they could put that aside for the good of the order for the year, I think that's huge. Now, no one in a unit where you've got 120 guys on the team, you get 85 scholarship, 35-ish walk-ons, whatever, no one's there's never going to be a point where there's some utopia and everybody's happy. Like that doesn't exist. And the same with the coaching staff room. There's some guys that are going to be upset with each other in the coaching staff room, offense, defense. Um, I mean, hell, there might be times where the defense hates the offense or the offense hates the defense just because, again, it was always, it was never like vocally, but you could feel like, when one side of the ball lets the other side down. And when I was there under Tressel, we let our defense down a lot on offense. Like we sucked. Like we lost the Texas game in '05 because we sucked on offense. We lost the Penn State game in '05 because we sucked on offense. Like our defense literally couldn't have done more than they did. And we sucked. We sucked the big one. And so it cost us the national championship. So, you feel bad. And it was a credit to some of those guys like AJ Hawk and stuff that they didn't, kill us. But I was very upset and disappointed with how bad we were on offense when we couldn't get things going. I didn't agree with the quarterback shuffle that we did in the Texas game. I thought that was ridiculous. But again, that's neither here nor there 20 years later or whatever it was. But, I think that the chemistry is important. But I think it's important that both sides of the ball carry their own weight. And for a while, one of the big things Urban wanted to do is change the culture on offense, where it's like, hey, we're going to become a dominating offense. It's not going to be this run, punt, pray that the defense can hold them to 10 points and we win 14-10. Like he wanted to get rid of that, like in a hurry. And he did. Nevada, you've ran a lot of teams, owned a lot of teams. You've been on teams. You've been around teams. Your kids have been on teams. How important is team chemistry?
Well, I'd boil it down to this, and this is one thing that I feel that I've learned over the years, having been part of a lot of teams that on paper should have been better, or teams that weren't as good on paper that were. It's when your best players are also your best people. That's when you have the special teams. When your best players aren't great guys, it just doesn't work. And I think that, to me, that's always been the magic. And that's why you look at like hockey teams, when you look at the great captains on these teams, and you look at them, they're best players and they're the best guys in the world too. Those are the teams that are special. And I think that's what I'd boil it down to. I think that works in business. I think that works in sports. I think that works in life. But that's what I always look for. And you look at those, like at the '05 team where you've got AJ Hawk and guys like, what I'm saying? Like best players, best guys. So you're going to have tremendous chemistry on a team like that. And like I said, that's what I always look for. That's always been what we've tried to build around when we've tried to build teams. And I think that's kind of a winning formula if you're trying to do it anytime.
Yeah, that's a great point. Again, when you've got guys like AJ and Mangold and Rob Sims as your captains, like life is good. Nate Sally, I mean, those are four of the best humans I played with, just from a human being standpoint. But they were also nails when you looked at the grade sheets on Sundays. I mean, those guys were always grading in the 90s. They were always up for Player of the Week. I mean, they didn't leave any stone unturned. And again, like I loved AJ. AJ is one of my favorite players ever, just because the way he carried himself, the way he acted, the way he worked on the practice field, in the weight room, lifting after every practice. I mean, it was insane how hard that guy would work. And I loved it. Like, again, he's just a different cat. Jacob Allman next for the 10. Ryan is so young, head coach. He's not a Nick Saban, Jim Harbaugh experience level where he can groom young coordinators. He needs the mature coaches like Jim Knowles to help grow himself. I completely agree. I think that's a fantastic point. And again, that's why I think Bill O'Brien is a lot more enticing to me than Liam Cohen, who's a 38-year-old, than Jason Candle, who's a 44-year-old, whoever else, the LaFleur kid, he's young. I think, Ryan could learn a lot from a personal development standpoint by having Bill O'Brien in the room, because Bill's, he dove head first in that Penn State thing. Nobody wanted that job. I mean, Penn State was, they're hit by the bomb. They had 30 scholarships down, and he made them as productive as he could make them. Obviously, he ran the Texans. He's worked with Belichick. He's worked with Saban. I just think guys like that are invaluable. I really do. I think you can learn so much about how you approach things, how you approach situational football, how recruiting, again, like even just like learning recruiting for, what does Nick Saban do? Like what does Nick Saban demand of his guys? Like what's something different that they did that nobody else did, or something you never thought of, or whatever. I mean, again, I obviously have reverence for Nick Saban. I think he's fantastic, but to have his offensive coordinator, who he hired, I'm sure on the advice of Bill Belichick, in the room, how did he want the offense ran? Like, what was some stuff? Because then, if I'm Ryan, I'd be fascinated to have Bill O'Brien as a guy for in the building for 2 years just to learn, learn about what Belichick did, learn about what Saban did. I mean, those guys are the best for a reason, and it's not because they're kind-hearted, easygoing dudes. It's because they're hardcore. Um, so, I mean, for Ryan's personal development, I think Bill O'Brien would be a grand slam home run. Again, for whatever reason, people don't like him, but when you're a coach, a lot of times you have to be a big meanie and you have to be a screamer. And Bill O'Brien's got about 1,000 clips on YouTube of him screaming at Mac Jones or screaming at Bryce Young or whoever. But I'm good with that. Again, if that's what it takes to get these guys motivated. I mean, dude, if I had to coach Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, I'd be screaming every minute of my life too, because those guys are complete trash. Deep Jack 8, thanks for the 5. BOB hired by Saban and Belichick multiple times. Good enough for me. That's my point. I mean, again, I might be an idiot, and you guys might think I'm an idiot, and there might be people who think I'm an idiot, but the two best coaches in the history of football hired this guy multiple times. So, I mean, Nevada, how much weight do you put on the fact that, Bill O'Brien left Belichick to go to Penn State, then he went to the Texans, then he came back to the Patriots. Obviously, it didn't end up well this past year. And I think it's mostly because that offense was so devoid of talent that I don't think Sean McVay or any guru you want to name could have done much with that, with that talent base. But your thoughts on, on Belichick and Saban hiring this guy multiple times?
Well, let's throw Belichick to the curb. Let's say his opinion doesn't matter because he's an NFL guy, and we're not talking about the NFL. I mean, who's better than Saban? I mean, why wouldn't we want to do exactly what? I mean, you look at what Saban did. We've talked about this ad nauseum about roster management and medical red shirts and gray shirting and analysts and the type of hiring practices that he's done and roster. I mean, everything that he's done. That's the reason why he won 6 or 7 national championships. I mean, we could only dream about having that kind of success at Ohio State. So why wouldn't we want to emulate it? My one of my biggest complaints against Ryan Day was hiring the junior staff. When you have a staff that's got Fleming, Bailey, and Dennis on it, 3 out of your 10 guys are junior or kids. I don't think that's the way to do it. Maybe you can have 1, maybe 2, but 3. I don't think you can do that, and I think that's a mistake. Nick Saban would never do that. I mean, I'd have to go look at the staffs, but I don't think that Nick Saban had like 3 like junior kids on the staff and development guys and friends of friends and people that were the nephew of his usher in the wedding or something like that. So it seemed to me that he always just had a plethora of old grizzled veterans, and then he had a room full of analysts that were on top of that were all top-notch guys on top of that. So I think that's what we need to emulate, and hopefully that's the model that Ryan's moving towards.
Yeah, I totally agree. Francis Plum, thank you for the deuce. When the hammer drops on who then coaches the chalky pick is Sharon Moore. Obviously, he got his audition. He did fantastic last year. Jim Harbaugh just looks like he's destined for the LA Chargers. Nevada had that a month ago. But he also interviewed with the Falcons and anybody else who has a pulse. But Sharon Moore just seems like the guy, if Jim Harbaugh wants to leave Michigan in a decent state, leave him behind and leave some of that staff behind. And, you'll have some semblance of what you've built at Michigan over the last 3 years if you keep Sharon Moore as the head coach. And then it's kind of like what the team was like last year when he was suspended for, 6 games and Sharon was the head coach. Your thoughts on that, Nevada? I think you agree on the Sharon Moore take.
I think this makes sense. Just we've seen how tough it is managing these transitions, with Alabama, with Washington, now with Arizona. I mean, when you have guys move and all of a sudden kids fly into the portal, and I mean, Arizona lost like 9 kids in like 15 minutes and stuff like that. So I think Michigan would do well to do that. They help protect the roster. I think it's the right kind of hire that they want to make. And they've got some experience and some comfort with them. So To me, that would be a logical pick, and I think that'll be the pick.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that that's going to be, and he'll do good. I mean, again, he's the guy that I'll never forget when they named him the O line coach. I was stunned, and I was like, "Oh boy, this guy's he's never coached the O line before." But Jim Harbaugh's again everywhere he goes, no matter who his line coach is, his O line always looks really good. Stanford, San Francisco, Michigan under Ed Warner, and under the guy that was pre Ed. I mean, their O line's always good. So that's kind of a Harbaugh staple is how they run the program. Joe Harn, thanks for the 5. Appreciate you. If we get O'Brien for OC, would also help with the quarterback room. Absolutely. Then, if that happens, he will coach special. Who will coach special teams? It'll be interesting to see if they divide that up amongst the coaches. If you add James, if you add a second D line coach, again, there's a bunch of different gyrations that are going on right now. Like, do you make James a full-time guy, or are they obsessed with doing this kind of succession planning for Larry Johnson and you get Jason Taylor or somebody else? I think that, the way special teams have gone in the last 5-10 years is that you definitely don't need a special teams coordinator anymore because the kickoff is basically dead. Punt return is basically dead, because we fair catch 95% of our balls. So we don't even need to set up a return anymore. So basically you have to coach the punt team and you have to coach punt return. And again, like the way we punt the ball, generally we're sky punting it and you're having your gunners run around and scream nasty things at the punter or at the punt returner and they fair catch it. So there's not anywhere near as much, I guess, strategy that goes into those. Obviously you got to stay in your lanes and do whatever, but it's just, the game's just so different now than where it used to be 15-20 years ago. But I could see them dividing it up amongst, the punt team could be, if they hire James Laurinaitis, he could be in charge of the punt team. The punt return team could be Brian Hartline, or it could be Keenan Bailey. The punt, obviously the field goal team is always the O-line coach. That's Justin Fry. Field goal block is Larry Johnson. Kickoff return, obviously that could be Hartline or Keenan Bailey again, or Tony Alford. And then like the regular kickoff, that could be Tim Walton, or it could be Matt Giriani. It could be, I mean, that's how they used to do it back in the day with Tress, and even with Urban, we always we gave like each coach got one unit, and then all the other coaches kind of chip in. It's not like, okay, but you got one guy like Luke Fickell was always in charge of the punt team. So, he took it real serious and he was real good at it. And, but then all the other coaches that had players on the unit would be helping coach things up. I mean, it's not that hard to do when you've got a good crew. But I just don't think you need a dedicated special teams guy, especially since our special teams have been trash like for the last 4 years. So, and then you can also hire an analyst to kind of help oversee everything to make sure that it's smooth. Nevada, do you have any thoughts on special teams? Again, I used to care a lot more about special teams. These last 3 years we've been trash at it. So, I mean, I would get somebody to own each unit and just away we go. Because again, it's really not that hard. But your thoughts on that, Nevada?
Yeah, I think I'd do it differently. I think I wouldn't overthink this. I would just think I'd take Laurinaitis and make him the special teams coach on top of whatever position group they want to give him. Because as you've noted many times, he was a terrific special teams player, a guy that gave maximum effort all the time. And maybe one of the reasons why our special teams haven't been special has been coaching. And that if James was taking care of it, that certainly wouldn't be an issue. So that's where I'd go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like it'd be attractive to give James like a special teams coordinator title right off the jump street, put it on his card, goes out recruiting. Hey, the special teams coordinator came to see me / linebackers coach. Like I like that idea. Again, people, let's say they worry about James, his age, does he really want to coach? I'm like, dude, like Gerard Mayo is the same age, literally the exact same age as James, and he's the head coach of the Patriots now, which is crazy to me that they hired Gerard Mayo over Mike Vrabel. But I mean, Robert Kraft must love that guy. Realtor John Rawlings, thank you for the 20. Connor Stallions was hired away from the midship program where he perfected and broke the sign stealing codes. Yes. Harbaugh hired Stallions program in 2019 to 2022. Stallions has zero coaching background. Well, when a lot of these guys get into coaching, they don't really have like some huge coaching background outside of maybe coaching at a high school or midget football or whatever. But, they want to get into the game. Maybe their obsession is, I mean, this guy was like grossly obsessed with Michigan football. So any way he could get into that facility and add value and do something, he did. And again, I'm not giving the guy credit, but I'm gonna give the guy credit because he figured out a way to become like a guy who just surged up the ladder, not necessarily for a coaching position, but to catch the eye of Jim Harbaugh and Sharon Moore, Mike McDonald. Like you see him standing right next to these coordinators on game day because he was stealing the signs. He stole everything. I mean, he figured out a way where I'll go to these games, I'll have these stringers, they'll get me the tape, I'll break it down. By game day, I'll have it memorized, and in real time, I'll be able to tell you the plays. And I'm sure after they figured out that this guy could catch every sign and basically do it with really, really high accuracy, that these guys are like, man, this is real easy to call plays now when I know that they're going to be in cover 4, or I know they're going to be in too deep, or they're going to be blitzing or whatever. And so he's right in the middle of stuff. And for a guy who's an intern breaking into the thing that has no coaching background, and his dad isn't Bill Walsh or, Bill Belichick or whatever, like this guy figured out a way to become really important in Michigan football. And again, Jim Harbaugh was 0-5 until this guy showed up. And then all of a sudden he started winning some football games. So, I again, like what he did was wrong and it's going to crush the program, but he figured out a way to get the attention of Jim Harbaugh. And when you're a guy who's like an unpaid intern making peanuts, like that's really hard to do because they don't want your play suggestions. They don't want your insight on the game plan. They might have you run a scout team or do something like that, but you're never going to be like a higher up when you're that early, that young, unless you do something spectacular. And that's what this guy did. And for a while it worked until the music stopped, and then it didn't. Nevada, your thought on Stallions and what he is going to end up bringing down on Michigan football?
Well, again, let's be clear. He did something spectacularly illegal. I mean, that's why it worked. I mean, this wasn't like he found the new way to do this and this was great. I mean, it's like Bud Fox and Wall Street. You know what I'm saying? Like he cheated, he did something illegal, and yeah, that gave him standing within the Michigan organization. That gave him a seat right on the shoulder of the coordinators. Which, like as you said, for somebody with no experience, with no playing experience, no familial experience, no background, it was unprecedented what he was doing. The access that he was given, it's because he was cheating. So, like, let's just be really clear. Yes, in life you can get amazing things, and you can skip the line, and you can do stuff that nobody else has ever done before. If you're willing to break the law, if you're willing to break the rules, if you're willing to bring ruin down upon the organization. But at some point, the bill comes due and the music stops. And that's what's happening now with Michigan, and they're going to pay for it. And Connor Stallions, they're not going to be quite as happy with Connor Stallions when all this stuff breaks, because it's going to be bad. And I don't even think I know. I shouldn't say I don't think. I know that Michigan fans really have not come to grips with how bad this is going to be. And it's going to be bad, and it's going to be happening. I would say in the next, I'm saying March, April, so the next 90 to 120 days, it's going to get real for Michigan. So buckle up, boys.
Yeah, I mean, it's like go watch the HBO documentary where De Niro plays Bernie Madoff, and you'll be like, that's kind of what this is. It's like he fooled everybody. He was the head of the SEC. I mean, he was on all these prestigious boards and all this, and then all of a sudden they figured out everything he did was a complete sham, and the music stopped, and there was no more wow, what a great guy, what a swell dude, what a genius, because they figured out it was all a sham, it was all cheating. And that's kind of where these guys are about to be. Ben G, thank you for the 5. How does a Knowles type coordinator hire make the difference for a head coach? What kinds of things does a big hire take off of Day's day-to-day plate? Well, if you're Ryan and you hire an adult who can run the room and has a culture and knows how to coach the coaches and coach the players and demand certain aspects and certain things are met, then, you don't have to worry about the defense anymore. I think Ryan's to the point now where he doesn't worry about the defense anymore. I'm sure that, if we go out and, spit the bit, then he will. But right now, he's going to be feeling really good about the culture of this defense and where it's come from. from that Rose Bowl, Kerry Combs' last game to where we are now in terms of guys coming back, guys wanting to play in the system, how good we've been on defense the last 2 years. And I think that he wants that same level of trust and that same level of it's not relaxed. It's not being relaxed. It's just, that level of confidence that, hey, if I walk out of the room and I got to go do something, like stuff is still going to get done at an elite level. And that's why, like, I think like a Bill O'Brien is really appealing because, if Ryan's going to go walk out of the room and call a bunch of donors to raise a couple $1,000,000 to get NIL stuff done, hey, Bill, you run this meeting this afternoon with Keenan Bailey and Justin Fry, and this is what we got to get done, and I'll come back at the end of it. You can give me a report. Like, I think that's what he's looking for. I don't think he has that right now. I think that he's got guys that, they do the best they can, but I don't think they can operate at the level and demand the standards that like a Bill O'Brien. Because Bill O'Brien can walk in there and throw on his little Ohio State hoodie and say, guys, I've coached Tom Brady. Like, I've coached Bryce, like Heisman winners. Like, who are you? This is the standard. This is how these guys practice. This is how these guys work. This is what I've won with these guys, and that's the difference is like, a lot of the guys in that room haven't really accomplished anything in football. Like seriously, like, I mean, go look how many conference championships they've won, rings they've won. You go get Bill O'Brien, man, he's won some big games. I mean, he's coached in some big games, a lot of pressure. And he knows how to run an organization. And I think, again, that's what Ryan wants. He wants a guy that if he leaves the room, the car doesn't just go flying off the cliff because he's not in there with his foot up everybody's, hind end the entire time. And Nevada, your thoughts. What does a Jim Knowles type coordinator do for a head coach?
Well, I think you hit the nail right on the head. And I think we've talked about this, but I don't think this gets enough attention. Ryan Day is now spending an inordinate amount of time fundraising and doing an NIL, and that's a new one. And so for a guy like Ryan, who's got already got this huge responsibilities, he's the de facto quarterback coach, he's the offensive coordinator, he's the play caller, he's also the CEO of the organization. I mean, he's got all these things, and now you throw on top of it, you're also the primary fundraiser for these collectives. Because look, the big money people that are giving money to Ohio State or giving money to these collectives, they want to hear from Ryan Day. They don't want to hear from Junior Geppetto, who's going to call them up, or Tyvis Powell, or they don't want to hear from
exactly.
Any of those. They want to hear from Ryan Day. You want the big check? You want the $200,000 check, the $500,000 check, the $1 million check? They want to hear from the head coach. They want to hear what the money's going to be spent on. That there's a commitment to winning. That's what's going on. And Ryan Day is the one who's leading the charge raising this money. And that's, if I had to point to an MVP in terms of why Ohio State has gotten really good at the NIL game, and I know there's a lot of people involved, but Ryan Day's been doing it. So for me, him getting an adult in the room that can run the offense enables him to do more of that stuff. And we've all seen how important that is to player retention. That's the strategy Ohio State's going with, and Ryan Day's the key.
Yeah, and I think going forward, in this time of the year, off-season time of the year, going up to signing day time of the year, the most important job for Ryan Day and Ross Bjork is reloading the cachet for the NIL. I'm telling you, like that is this time of the year. You need guys that can run staff meetings, and these guys are going to be calling these big donors. Because I'm telling you, to rebuild this roster and to retain this roster, it costs a fortune. But we get to benefit from it. Like us Ohio State fans, us at Buckeye Scoop, all of you guys, you get to benefit from the fact that these guys are out hustling and raising money. And again, people can sit around and say, I hate NIL. I wish it was back to the kids being poor. I wish it was back to, it wasn't like the minor leagues or whatever. But like, when there's these $1 billion TV contracts now, and they're going to have a new round of TV deals in a few years, and Amazon and Apple are going to offer these astronomical amounts of money, and these coaches are making $15 million a year. And like our cheapest, like, position coach is making $600,000 a year. Like, eventually these players have got to make something outside of just SpaghettiOs and potato chips. And so I love it because, our NIL efforts, the foundation and everything they did, that is what kept these guys here. And I know they love the Ohio State and they love the band and they want to run that thing back, but it's a lot easier to do it when you get a little chunk of change and you're not just coming back, to eat Cheetos again for another year. And then you could go, raise your draft stock, run it back, beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, live in some comfort. Again, like I love all of it because again, in the past, we were the losers because we didn't cheat and we didn't give guys cash, and now we can. So you've got this loaded roster, and it's largely because of NIL. And honestly, I love it because again, like I say, all these other schools cheated for years and we couldn't do anything about it. And now we can legally take care of these guys. Poohbeard 12, thank you for being a Scoop Ultra member. Thank you for always being on here, brother. Appreciate you. Thank you for the 10. Even Bobby, this is great. Motorcycle escort fiasco. Petrino has a job as an OC. Weiss is Hiroshima radioactive, and that's not good. That's your boy from Michigan, Nevada. But their fans / beat aren't worried because they are too dumb to understand this. That's fine. Again, all we go by is the legal documents, like what Tony Petitti wrote, and then the precedent. Like, look at what Florida State just got smacked with for level 2 violations. Like, these guys are facing level 1 violations, and they gave the Stone Cold Steve Austin like double middle finger to the NCAA investigators by not interviewing, by running and hiding. And again, I just think that everything that these guys believe is false. And they've been wrong about everything. Like, that's the amazing thing about the Michigan beat is like, you couldn't be more wrong about things if you tried. It's almost like they're the Onion or they're like Mad Magazine or the National Enquirer at this point, except the Enquirer's way more accurate. They've got better sources. But Nevada, again, I agree with Weiss not having a job, because right now it's hiring season for the NFL, for the NCAA, and we haven't heard this guy's name at all. What does it mean for what is going down with Michigan?
Well, I liken it, to like you read about things where people are like, hunting, and all of a sudden the forest or whatever just goes completely still and all the sound stops. That's kind of ominous when that happens. And I don't think, like I said, the Michigan fans are like, oh, it's quiet. That's good. That means nothing's happening. And the reality is it's because the hammer's about to drop on top of them. And Weiss with the gambling cookies, with the hours of practice footage, and with the links to the other, Michigan staff. That's where this thing's going to get messy. And like you said, it's multiple level 1 infractions from multiple different investigations, and on top of a lack of cooperation, which all leads to a lack of institutional control. So, it's going to be bad.
Yeah, it's like I said, I can't wait. And I can't believe that they're not nervous about it. I mean, dude, like Jim Harbaugh is he's been dying to get out there for 3 years. I mean, he wants nothing to do with Michigan, and he's like Mr. Bo Schembechler, Mr. Played there, just won a national championship. Guys can't wait to get out of there. Like, it's crazy. And like, I mean, can't you like smell that? Like when Jim Harbaugh has probably the biggest contract in college football history sitting on his desk, and he wants immunity, and he wants, I can't get fired for any infractions. Like all these little, things that Don Yee's, he said, hey, I want all these things where if anything bad happens, I'm exonerated, I get all my money. And like, you're not asking for that unless you know that the hammer of God isn't about to come down on you. D Sunny, thank you for the 5. This is a good one, Nevada. I'm going to throw this one to you first. How good was Duron Carter? Did he have the potential to be a first-round pick? I'll let you start on Duron.
Did he have the potential to be a first-round pick? Well, look, inside of everybody is a first-round pick, I'll say. But with Duron Carter, was interesting talent, but had a lot of off-field types of issues and a lot of other stuff kind of going on that I'm not sure how serious he was about football, and probably that's why he never lived up to the type of potential that he could have.
He was just impossibly stupid. Like, he was so dumb. And it's like some of these kids, I mean, that kid had all kinds of talent. I mean, obviously, grew up Chris's kid, comes here. So obviously people, they're starbound because like, oh, Duron Carter. But he was just so dumb. Like, he was playing for the Indianapolis Colts, and I had a guy that was on the Colts tell me that like they had, a soldier come in and talk, And Duran literally raised his hand and asked, how many guys have you killed? And, what's your kill? Ask, you don't ask a soldier that. Are you crazy? And there's about 100 other Duran stories I could tell that I'm not going to tell for this story, but God bless, was he stupid. And then he bounced around. He was in, I think, Edmonton, and he did the CFL thing for a little bit, but that kid could have been as good as he wanted to. But again, that's why I tell you guys, wait until they get to college. Can they handle college? Are they going to work? Are they going to be complete morons? Because again, there isn't a human being on earth. I mean, I've seen everything that could ever happen to a kid. I've seen kids get arrested in the first week. I've seen kids drug tests. I've seen kids not go to class. And I'm talking really good players. And they just get, they're just like dust in the wind. They just, I mean, and I mean, again, I'm not going to go in the Wayback Machine because you guys aren't interested in it, but go look at my recruiting class. Go look on Rivals or whatever database you want to, and go look at the guys that are in my class. And I swear to God, halfway through my first year, half of those guys were gone. We had a small class, so 16, 17 guys. We lost 7 or 8 dudes in the first 2 quarters. It was incredible. And I'm because again, when you're a dumb idiot high school kid, like we all were, we come down together, we got orientation together. Man, these are going to be my best friends, my best buddies. They're going to be in my wedding, best man, groomsmen. Man, those guys were gone. And they were dumb. They got arrested for beating people up and stealing a wallet and just the dumbest stuff. And it's how can you be so stupid? So again, that's why, and Duran's a kid, his dad's a gazillionaire, obviously a great NFL career, Hall of Famer, probably best receiver in Ohio State history for my money. And so he had and he played as a freshman. That's another thing. He played a lot in 09, but just was an idiot, And again, some of these kids, they can't get out of their own way. I'm dude, if you can just keep your head on straight for 3 years, you can go pro, make a bunch of money, just don't be an idiot for 3 years. And some of these guys, they can't help themselves. So there's my Duran story. Happy 2014. Thank you for the 20. How do some YouTubers get away with cursing every other word? I don't know. YouTube is a strange beast where sometimes they'll nail you for something that you didn't do. And cursing is something that I know demonetizes a lot of videos. Some guys don't get demonetized. I don't know why. But it's just not really our strategy. We might let something slip every now and again, but we generally don't curse. Just because it's just not, for one, we're a family show. A lot of families, kids, husbands, wives watch it, and they don't like it. I've never gotten a comment in an email. My email's bart.145. I get a ton of emails, comments. And it said, Kirk, I wish you would swear more. The show would be so much better if you swear more. So, and again, I love swearing. I swear, when I'm off there, I'm swearing all the time. But when I'm on here and I'm talking to you guys, I'm talking to the folks, no chance ever. Your thoughts, Nevada?
Yeah, just it's one. YouTube is a riddle wrapped in an enigma.
Yes.
And 2, we like to think we're intelligent enough to be able to communicate without swearing. And if we slip up, we apologize, but we try not to let that happen too often.
Yeah, and we do slip up sometimes. Gunnar Bennett, thank you for the deuce. You guys are the best. Appreciate you, brother. I still do a live stream with you. You got a huge channel. Let's get together. D Sunny, thank you for the 5. Now that we have a new president in AD, do you think 7-figure boosters will qualify for a nice dinner and a free ride from the airport? Wow, that is a great question. Man, I must have told that story. God, if you had let me run the development at Ohio State, it would go to the space age. I'm telling you, because we're so bad at it. We have days in level concierge service with our development office. And again, I don't care because, I'm not to the level where I'm giving 7 and 8 figure donations, but I know dozens of guys that are at that level. And then I hear these stories and I'm like, that's disgusting. If you were my client, in my day job, or you gave money to Buckeye Scoop to our Pay It Forward Foundation, I would never treat you like that. I would call you. I would thank you. I would send you, I send Christmas cards to to our donors, to clients, to people that take care of our site. Like, I mean, because that's just like what you're supposed to do, you know? And like, I hear the stories about like our Ohio State development team, and it's like, it's atrocious. And we've got and a lot of it isn't, oh, hey, you got to go send a private jet to pick this guy up, or hey, you got to go take him out to some $5,000 steak dinner or whatever. It's like, no, it's just like say thank you. Like maybe make sure that they got a ride from the airport, which I mean, I pick guys up from the airport when they come in because it's just like, dude, you're a good friend of mine. Like, you don't need to take an Uber, an old stinky Uber or whatever, because, you know, like it's just a nice thing to do. Um, but your thoughts on that? About it? I mean, you're a donor. Like, who am I talking to? Like, what is your experience like as a donor, given the level that you've given? And I know guys have given a lot of money to Ohio State, and then they tell me about how they get treated. And I'm just like, I'm embarrassed, and I'm not even associated with Ohio State anymore. Like, I got 2 degrees from there, and I talk about them on my podcast, and I write about them. But I don't work for Ohio State. Ohio State doesn't pay my bills, but God bless. Like some of the stuff I hear, it's just terrible. Your thoughts about it?
Well, I told the story on Buckeye Scoop, so I guess I'll tell it here. I'll keep it brief. But basically, back in the early '90s, got approached by Ohio State and said, "Hey, look, we want to do this new facility. Would you and your family be interested in paying for it?" And at the time, we're like, "Sure." What's the deal? So they give us the amount. We write the check. It's all great. And honestly, we didn't even want or expect anything. We didn't really know what the deal was. And they said, look, your name will be on it in perpetuity, and you'll have a sign outside. We're like, great. God, wow, we get a sign. So the facility goes up. There's a sign outside. And one day, actually, it was Kurt calls me up and he's like, dude, I think your sign's down. I don't think your sign's up anymore. And I'm like, really? Because I hadn't been back in a while. It literally had been a couple of years. I hadn't been back. He goes, yeah, I don't think your sign's up anymore. So I waited. It came to the game. Look out there. Went with my kids. We all look and they're like, Daddy, our sign's gone. So we look. So I emailed Gene Smith, who we know, and say, hey, Gene, not a big deal, but and again, I've said this to the thing. We're talking about a sign that might have cost $50 at like Home Depot and wood. We're talking about a little plywood sign. This is not some elaborate flashing neon sign like Times Square. We're talking about like a plywood sign. And Gene Smith's reply to me was, "You never had a sign outside the facility." And so I'm like, "What? What do you mean I never had a sign?" Of course I had a sign. We had a sign, and he's like, "No, you guys never had a sign." So now I'm at the point where Gene Smith is basically calling me a liar because he's saying that we didn't have a sign when I knew we had a sign. I didn't imagine, I didn't dream it. And so it got a little heated there. And from that standpoint, Ohio State was persona non grata in terms of a number of directed donations that we did over the years after that, including my father's estate, over a stupid sign. And the ironic thing is, years later, I'm going through a picture. Whatever. My wife's got 10,000 picture albums, and I come across a picture in the back, and lo and behold, it's me standing in front of the sign. And so I took a picture of it, sent it to Ohio State, and they reluctantly put our sign back up. But that's the kind of the level of I use that story as just kind of an allegory for that's how Ohio State treated a lot of people that donate money. I think because of the success of the football team, they just became drunk on the success and they forgot the little things about customer service. The customer's always right. The donor's always right. And why would you want to tick somebody off over a $50? I mean, at least say to me, I don't really know about that. That was under Andy Geiger. Let me look into it. But don't tell me it wasn't there. Don't tell me that I imagined it, that I dreamed the sign up. But that's my personal firsthand experience. So for me, anybody is better than Gene Smith, because when I had that, when I got that interaction, I'm like, if you could do that to me, because the money that we donated that money back in 1993. I mean, that was a lot of money back then, and in today's dollars, that'd be a real lot of money. So all over a stupid $50 sign. But that's my story. Probably way too long on that. So we'll move on to the next great topic. But now you all know.
No, I've got some whoppers, and one was with a guy who's multi billionaire, I mean, it's so bad, and I was embarrassed, and I remember, um, it involved the Shoemaker Center. I'm not going to get into it. You know, if you're listening to this, man, it was a bad day. But I'm not going to get into this because I don't want to move along. Mark Steppy, appreciate you. Thank you for the 5. I do appreciate that you guys aren't cursed. Yeah. Again, like it just doesn't add to what we're trying to do, in my opinion. Love watching you and Zach, but can only watch you around my kids. Well, there you go. I mean, I've got people that are couples that like this show. People watch with their families, you know. So it's just for what we do, it doesn't add anything. You know, again, like if we're on at 7 o'clock. A lot of you guys have young kids. You guys probably sitting chilling in the living room. You might throw some on the TV on the YouTube, and you guys can watch us. You know, a lot of the kids go to bed at 8 9 o'clock, and so again, we enjoy that and we appreciate you for that. Sean Rawlings, thank you for the 20. 1991 was the first year I watched the Buckeyes. Robert Smith was my favorite player that year. Nevada, what do you remember about the 1991 Buckeyes? Because I was not a Buckeye fan quite yet. I was a little young. I started to get into them really 95. I'd say was the first year the year Eddie won the Heisman. And I was growing up in Florida, which is a little bit different. But what do you remember about the 91 Buckeyes and Robert Smith?
Well, just I mean, Robert Smith to me, will always be about that whole Elliot Uzelac story where he quit football, where he quit football because the offensive coordinator Elliot Uzelac was I don't even remember the circumstances, but it was a weird one. It was like he was mean to him or didn't respect his studies or something like that. And then Robert came back, and then I remember him leaving school early to go to the NFL, and I kept thinking, wow, that seems inconsistent with a guy who really cares about his studies. But Robert was a complicated dude. I mean, he was a guy that was just a world class talent. He could have been a world class athlete in probably one of 4 sports. I believe he was a medical student. I mean, he was super smart, super accomplished in both college and pro football. But such an enigma, such a weird time in Ohio State football history because we weren't very good. That was like one of the times in my life we talk about how it's easy to kind of fall into the abyss and to kind of mediocrity, and we were really mediocre back then in '91, and it's tough. That's why these years when we're going 12-1 or 13-1 or 12-2, and we're talking about firing the coach, it's like, man, we could only dreamed about that back in '91 because those were tough times to be a Buckeye fan.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sean Finnerty, thank you for the 5. I am from Brighton, Michigan. Stay warm. It's going to be freezing up there. And the people here are all in denial. They think that when Jim Harbaugh leaves, this is all going to fade away. No, that is not going to happen. Jim Harbaugh is trying to get on the first thing smoking to get out of there. But, when coaches leave, like when Pete Carroll left USC, Chip Kelly left Oregon, like the nuclear bomb still hits the program. It just generally doesn't follow the coach. Again, like Jim Harbaugh is known for 3 years what he was doing, which is why he's interviewed with seemingly every franchise in the NFL that's had an opening. And that's why he wants to get out. I mean, how many coaches would build their alma mater into a juggernaut that just won 15-0, and then just be dying to get out and interview with like the Atlanta Falcons, interview with the LA Chargers, which is the job he's going to get. I think that, the NCAA, like when you thumb your nose at the NCAA, like they still wield power. People think that they're like this neutered entity. These guys are going to smack Michigan. And I'm excited about it because I don't know how people could think that this isn't coming. Like this isn't going to happen. It's the greatest cheating scandal in the history of college football. Like there has to be a massive precedent set where this cannot happen again. This has to be so over the top in terms of the penalties that nobody ever thinks twice about doing it again. Because again, this was literally this is affecting livelihoods, players. All these kids that lost because Michigan cheated. There's got to be a severe consequence to this. Nevada, your thought on people thinking that when Harbaugh leaves, this is going to fade away?
Yeah, well, certainly that's not what has happened in other scandals, and I'll throw another one in. Think about Penn State. Now, Penn State,
Mhm.
we're not comparing on-field cheating to what happened at Penn State because that's a different kind of horrific. But it wasn't really about football. I guess it was indirectly because they were protecting the brand, and they could say this and that. But that wasn't really an on-field cheating scandal, and they essentially got the death penalty there at Penn State. I mean, there were multiple years, 50 scholarships, postseason. I mean, that was really bad. And in terms of an on-field scandal, this one is exponentially worse. So yeah, no, it's going to make no difference whether or not. Harbaugh's not the only one who's thumbed his nose at the NCAA. The president of Michigan, Ono, has completely
Oh
flipped off
God.
both the NCAA and the Big Ten. And dude, he's going to be there, and he's not going to be quite as quite as chipper when they come around this time, because it doesn't matter whether Harbaugh's there, the institution is going to pay, and he's going to be one of the ones right at the front line getting his servings.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an epic smackdown. Well, nice night on the questions. Appreciate you guys. Nevada, we wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts as we go on Caleb Downs watch day like 8? And then we also talked about the new AD, Bill O'Brien. The OC thing should be coming any day now, so it'll be real interesting to see when that pops. But any final thoughts, Nevada?
Yeah, no, just keep an eye on the Caleb Downs stuff, and I mean, I'm probably in the minority, but I feel like the longer that this goes, the better this is for Ohio State. I think if this was an easy, quick decision, it would have just been, bing, bang, boom, Taze Fawcett, do up the edit with Georgia, and that might come out in the next 15 minutes. But the way Ohio State's been rolling this offseason, man, yeah, I've been around too many hot shooters in Vegas to know when guys get hot, you don't bet against them, and nobody's been hotter than Ohio State this offseason. So keep the faith.
Yeah, I mean that's something that's a great point. I mean we have more positive momentum than I think I've ever seen in the program. Like since we hired Urban Meyer and got that recruiting class fixed in 2012, 2013. Like this has been just a monumental offseason. So again, shoot or shoot, and Ryan Day is shooting his shot. So with that being said, we appreciate you guys kicking it with us tonight. Hope you guys had a great time with us. Again, appreciate the great questions. Thank you guys for being in here. If you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like on your way out the door. Those are huge for the video. They really help us build this channel, so thank you for that. Also, click the subscribe button if you guys have not subscribed, and click that little alert bell. And be sure to send this around to all your friends and family that love Ohio State. We appreciate you guys so much, as always. Shout out where you guys are watching from. I saw a lot of my Southern Ohio boys are in here tonight, so thank you guys for kicking it with us, as always. My Portsmouth boys, I saw Uniontown was in the building yesterday, so go Lake Blue Streaks. So we appreciate all of you guys that are watching from all over the country and the world. So it's really cool to see where you guys are watching from. So shout out where you're from. Shout out who you guys are watching with. I love seeing that families watch this together, couples watch this together. That's really cool. It's always cool to see who you guys like to tune in with. I read all the comments, so none of your comments go to waste. So keep those things cranking along, and we appreciate you guys so much. Do you guys want the best Ohio State football experience in existence? Join BuckeyesCoop.com. It is our premium message board. Go to BuckeyesCoop.com. Sign up for a membership. Our message board is absolutely insanely busy right now. So if you guys want Ohio State football, there's never an off season on BuckeyesCoop.com. That being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Appreciate you. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. And thank you, Scoop family. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Tune in around 7. We will be ready to rock. Go Bucks.